On our special segment of 100-Day Agenda, we're joined by Ravi Uppal, the CEO and Managing Director of JSPL. Mr. Uppal, very good to be with you. Your sector is the one crying for reforms. Power is the big pie of infrastructure. Both distribution and generation seems to be in a huge mess. Now, what should the new government do to reboost the power sector?
The basic problem is arising because of distribution. That is the nerve which is paining the most. And I think the government needs to address it. Here again, we need to carve out a more role for the private sector to take ownership of distribution networks in different cities, using the franchise model or using any other PPP model. There are various models available. We have brilliant examples of cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Ahmedabad and Surat, Kolkata, where the private distribution has been done. Nobody complains about the quality of power and the availability of power. And people also accept the way the rates are being given. You have a differential rate based on the amount of power you consume, you can pay. The economically weaker sections consuming less, they can be given very low rate, but those who want to consume more power, they have to pay for that in a commensurate way. So I think we need to do a bigger role for them. We cannot afford subsidization of power anymore. We today have accumulated losses of nearly 1,70,000 crores for the state electricity boards. How many times the government and planning commissions will come to bail them out? If it was one time, one can go through the pain. But this cannot be a recurring process. So in order that we can put a sort of end to it, it's important that we should stop this system of cross subsidies on power at the distribution level. Number two, we must give a bigger role to private players, and third, you can also develop a model of PPP. So we have tried it out in the last 3 to 4 decades, and we have come with very satisfactory solutions. I think we just need to take this forward.
Right. Mr. Uppal, the other key issues, of course, surrounding the mining, it's in such a mess. What is your solution? How do you think in the government now really fix the mining mess?
In the first 100 days, government should try to look at the subject of the mining policy. Here once again, anything which has happened in the past, I think we should stop wasting time doing witch hunting, because we are not going to achieve anything much out of it. There's still so many mines, whether you take coal, you take iron ore, copper, or any other natural mineral. There's a huge amount which remains to be explored. And I think government should focus more on what can be done. We have to move away from this concept of a regime of shortages and move into an economy where basic things are available in abundance. Take, for example, the case of coal. We have proven reserves, extractable reserves in excess of 200 billion tons. And so far we are mining just about, half a billion, a little over half a billion tons. So, for how many decades, how many generations we want to preserve this coal for? So I think we have to take a quick decision whereby we give so many coal licenses for mining that we should have surplus in our economy for coal, and it becomes a non-issue. And so is the case with many other minerals. I think we have to take a very liberal view. We should move over petty-mindedness, and thereby we create a regime where there's a lot of supply. And supply also takes care of any kind of the inflation that can possibly arise. So far we have been more worried about the demand, but I think we need to worry more about creating more supply of commodities.
All right. Mr. Uppal, there is this talk about ease of setting up greenfield projects. What can the government do in this direction when it comes to clearances? So many of these projects are stuck because clearances haven't come in.
Well, I think that's a very good point you have raised. There was a time when we had scanty care for environment, and then we moved to another extreme where we have become so finicky and looking into every small issue whereby we can stop the process. So I think here again we must take a pragmatic view. That a lot of environmental issues are not so difficult to sort of surmount. There has to be a constructive dialogue between the Ministry of Environment and anyone who's wanting to set up the project. And we are a developing economy. For us, the very pressing need at this moment is to increase the growth of economy. And we should not get as fastidious and finicky as some of the Western nations can afford to do today. I think we should have a very pragmatic policy in regard to environment. There must be time limits within which if you don't get the response, it should be taken as a deemed approved so that we do not have to wait indefinitely to get the environment clearances. I can tell you in our country, for example, if you build a power plant from the day you conceive the power project, it takes you about 8 years, out of which 3 to 4 years it is the pre-construction activity, which includes all the clearances, and the remaining period is the construction period. So you can imagine we definitely have huge room available for us to compress the pre-construction activity by having speedy approvals.
The other issue, of course, is land, Mr. Uppal. That's a key area of concern, isn't it, for industry? There is the land acquisition bill. We seem to have a template in place. Can the industry work around it, or do you think the new government should look at making some minor tweaks?
We need to now strike a balance between the land owners' interest plus the people who want to set up the industries. Number one, the government should not do any kind of discrimination when it comes to land act between the government-owned projects or the private projects. If you need the approval of 60% landowners for a government project, so must be the case for private owners. Why should there be a distinction that in their case 60, other case 80? So I think it should be a level playing field. The second one is, while the steps can be followed, and the companies which want to establish the projects, they can have a kind of setup which looks after the interests of the landowners, but every step which is in the process must be done very, very quickly. There must be time limits within which at the collector level or the owner's level, the response must be given, or it must be treated as a case of deemed approval. So I think, so that the landowners also feel that their interests are being looked after on a time-bound basis. They don't have to wait indefinitely. At the same time, those who want to run the project or set up the project, they must also take possession of land within a limited time.
Mr. Uppal, there have been people from your industry, from infrastructure, who've actually raised this whole need for an infrastructure ministry that will be the nodal ministry for infrastructure projects instead of something like a CCI or state approvals that always get stuck. Do you believe there is a need for a new ministry like infrastructure?
Well, it's always good to have a forum with a clear mandate and which is empowered to take all the decisions. But it reminds me of the time when the single window clearance concept was mooted. But then there again, it started as a very novel concept with a lot of enthusiasm about it. But later we found that it was single window clearance, but there was no empowerment, and the matter had to be referred back to all the concerned ministries. And that's where you add up time. So you might be getting answer from a single window, but there was no answer in the single window. So I think Environment Ministry, which is highly empowered, the kind of thing which is set up under the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs today, can be a help. But I feel on the other hand, there are certain ministries today which are not working in close cooperation. For example, if you take power projects, it can be Ministry of Petroleum, it can be Ministry of Coal, Ministry of Power, Ministry of Rural Welfare and Land. So many people get involved in it. So if you bring all of them, let's say if you have a Ministry of Energy with the different wings into it and a common regulator, I think things can move much faster.
Mr. Ravi Uppal, we really appreciate you taking time off and talking to us on the 100-day agenda for the new government, no matter who comes into office in May 2014.